Welcome to The Way Home with Laura Smith, the show that brings you wonderful guests, helpful advice, and uplifting stories. The Way Home. Live inspired. Here's your host, Laura Smith.
Well, what makes the world go round? What makes it more beautiful? For me, oh gosh, it's so many things. It's good books, it's art of all kinds, and good writing. Those are things I think I cherish the most when I think about what brings me joy and enrichment in my life. And I think a lot of others could agree with that. I have someone today who has been inspired, sounds like, for most of her life. And she has done just that. She has put a lot of what she does into books and photography. And she has a beautiful story to tell. Her name is Brandy Isadora. And she has one big creative career exploring all sorts of powerful themes of human interaction, engagement, and stories and art through, believe it or not, tattoos, and through also mannequins. Very interesting visually, but she's here to tell us all about it, what inspires her, and has her with 3 wonderful books that you can find on Amazon. Tattletales, which is tattoo stories and portraits, the stories of our lives, and mannequins, the stories of the first supermodel. So all 3 of those there. Brandy Isadora, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on your show.
So which did you do first? I know that you went to creative arts school in California, where you must have been surrounded by so much beauty, art, and creativity. Tell us what got you started.
Oh, gosh. Well, my mother has always been an artist, so I've always had a foot in the artistic world since I was a kid. But I think kind of what got me started on my journey was being in the fashion industry for about 10 years. I had my own company where I designed handbags, and I had to do a lot of photo shoots for advertising and marketing campaigns. And one day I just thought, maybe I could save some money and do my own photo shoot. And so I did, and I had such a great time that I just got more and more into photography. And when I chose to close my business to go back to school, I continued the photography and started exploring my creative writing skills. So by the time I graduated with my master's in creative writing from California College of the Arts, I moved back to Arizona and started doing photojournalism. And I worked for a magazine, and my job was to photograph and write reviews for heavy metal bands touring through Phoenix, Arizona. So, yeah, that kind of just started my journey, and it just progressed until I started doing photo shoots for family portraits, weddings, engagements, headshots for models and actors. So it just continued to grow, and I'm just so grateful for all the opportunities I've had.
Oh, my goodness. Yes, it sounds like it. I know that I wanted to be a photographer as a young person, but I'm so old that, this was back when we had a photography darkroom in high school, and spent many afternoons up there, with all those chemicals and, getting those big black and white photos out. And it was just so exciting and interesting when you think about where we've come with photography. Now our camera is in our pocket at all times. And it's just an interesting time, I would imagine, for photographers. But do you still use mostly the big, wonderful cameras that you can do all sorts of nuances with?
Yeah, I had the film camera growing up, but when I got into photography, it was digital. That's what I use now. So it is different because, with digital photography, it's so easy just to say, oh, I don't like that photo, I'll delete it. So you do work a little differently as opposed to when you have a film camera, you're limited. And so there's a different way of working. So it's kind of interesting to see how photography has changed based on the technology and how we think about taking photos.
Yes, for sure. But it does give everyone an opportunity to feel like for a moment in time they are a photographer. But you have such an in-depth knowledge of it. Your book, Tattletales, Tattoo Stories and Portraits. Interesting to me. I personally have never had a tattoo, will never get one. But my goodness, you talk about something that has exploded in the last, decade or so. The amount of people getting tattoos, people you never would think. Back in the old days, it was like, my uncle in World War II, who had the tattoo that said mom across the arm type of thing. That was it. But now it's a whole different ballgame. Tell us about why you were interested in tattoo stories and portraits and what you've learned about it. I'm sure it's much more than just putting ink on one's skin.
Yeah. So, even in high school, I always wanted to get a tattoo. And when I went to college, I remember all the women in my dorm went out to a tattoo shop and got a tattoo. And so I just never got one. I did eventually get it. I eventually got a tattoo about a year ago, but it took me years because I didn't know what I wanted. And so I started asking people, when I saw someone heavily tattooed, I would ask them, what was the meaning behind their tattoo? Why did they decide to get tattooed? And the stories were so interesting. It was more than just finding something on the wall and having it tattooed on your body. People really went to great lengths to kind of plan what they wanted to, put on their body. And so at first it was kind of like a passion project. And then I realized, this, might make an interesting book. And what I found was, people really take their tattoos seriously. It's, they love the art. They use it to memorialize their loved ones. I had one of the people who I interviewed tell me, they said, I get to die with my art. It goes with me wherever I go. And that really meant more to me when I heard about the fires in California when people lost everything in their home. It's true when you have, someone memorialized on your body, you take that to the grave. And so, I developed even a deeper appreciation for tattoos and also the artists behind the work, because I did interview tattoo artists and they told me what it's like to work in that industry. And you really have to love being a tattoo artist because you sacrifice a lot to be in that industry.
I can imagine.
Yeah, absolutely.
What you must go through, feeling this need for constant perfection. If heaven forbid you make a mistake, on someone's body, and I can't even imagine. But are a lot of the tattoo artists, are they actual artists, or are a lot of these done through some type of screening where they, kind of trace the picture on there and then they fill it in with color, or are some of them actual fine artists?
The tattoo artists that I interviewed were artists. They, had artwork that they sold outside of their tattoo work. And so what was amazing to me is there's so many different types of tattoo styles. So when I interviewed artists, they would tell me that, what they specialized in. So, sometimes it was Americana or watercolor, or they specialized in black and white portraits. So it's really interesting to see, how much the tattoo art has evolved. And it's, there's always a new style coming out, new technology to make the colors more vibrant and long lasting. So it's really fascinating how it's transformed in the last 30 years.
Absolutely. I when tattooing for women started coming in vogue, you would see, maybe they'd have a little flower or a heart or a butterfly or something, on their ankle. But now I see young women, and I mean women in their early 20s, they have full sleeves on their arms, and they look as, advanced in tattooing as, a rock star, a guy, would be. So that I would imagine that trend is also changed. I just wonder when it's going to start happening with little kids and people are letting their kids getting tattooed. But it is a fascinating thing, and how different people react to it and how they feel about it. And some of them who have gotten tattoos, I have a cousin who got them and then wanted them all taken off. And she's like, remember, when you get a tattoo, one day you're not going to want it. But then I have other people who I know, they said, I would never change my tattoo for a million years. So it's just interesting. So you've captured this, not only this beautiful art, but also the stories behind them, which seems to be sort of a trend in your writing. Your next book, The Stories of Our Lives. Tell us about that.
Well, while I was in graduate school, I had these workshops where we had to present a short story or an excerpt from a novel every other week. So I was busy just pumping out stories. And after I graduated, I kind of put the stories away, and because I was working on a novel. And then COVID happened, and everything was shut down. I, wasn't working. The orchestras, because I played the cello, the orchestras were not open. The whole world was just, it was very difficult, and I needed an outlet. So I decided to go back to my short stories, and I wrote more. And it was just very cathartic, because it gave me, an outlet to just pour my feelings and imagination into a project. And so that resulted in my short story collection, The Stories of Our Lives.
I love that. I never get tired when I love to listen to people because I love their stories. And to me, those stories are more fascinating and more real than anything like you could ever see in a fictional novel or movie. The real stories of real people, to me, are what it's all about. And that's wonderful that you channeled your creativity during that time to do something. And it sounds like you are so vastly artistic in all, from everything from being a cellist to a photographer and a writer. To have done that during COVID, what a great thing. I think if there's one thing good that did come out of COVID, it was that people found other avenues to channel things that they loved and they wanted to always do, but never had time to do. So that's beautiful as well. So that's The Stories of Our Lives. Now, the next one I find compelling, interesting, and from both the photography standpoint and the stories too. It's called Mannequins, Stories of the First Supermodel. Tell us the premise behind it.
This was another project that, it started out just, I was having fun. So a friend of mine and we would take road trips, and she liked antique stores. So one day I went in and I saw like these mannequin heads. And as a child, I was always kind of creeped out by mannequins. So seeing these mannequin heads, I thought, I'm just going to take pictures of them because I always carry my camera. And so it kind of became this like thing where every time we went into an antique store, I'd have to scout out the mannequin heads. And so after a while, I had a bunch of them. And then that kind of led me to do research on mannequins. I kind of, it was like, what's the history of mannequins? And it's really, they have a fascinating history. Mannequins go as far back as we know to ancient Egypt, because they were used to tailor clothes for the rulers and people of the upper echelon at that time. And then they became very popular during the Industrial Revolution, when glass became mass manufactured and we had storefronts. So I just thought this was a great opportunity to create a fun trivia book for people who want to learn more about the history of mannequins, because they have had a compelling history and they've had an effect on, societal norms in the fashion industry.
Absolutely. I love some of the photographs. When people look at your books and buy your book, they can check out for themselves. They have this, you're right. There's something almost eerie about them, but so fascinating and beautiful at the same time. I have my own mannequin story, which is only deep probably for me, but it's because it happened when I was such a young child. I've never forgotten it. And I was 5 years old and shopping in one of the nicer department stores with my mom in the town where I live back now 50 years later. And it was called Ziesel's, I think. And we were in there and it was very quiet and subdued. And there were these mannequins everywhere with beautiful clothes of the the decade that we were in at the time. And I remember my mother and the woman who ran the store saying, "Don't touch the mannequin." Well, I hadn't even thought of that, but hearing "don't touch it" made me insatiably curious to touch the mannequins, which I promptly did. And the entire thing came crashing to the ground, the 6-foot mannequin. And oh my goodness, I've never seen a stranger who didn't know me get so angry. She was very mad at me, and rightly so, I would think. But boy, did that scare me. I don't think my mom ever went in that store again. But to this day, I can still remember that feeling of, I asked myself afterwards, and I was only 5, but I remember saying, why did I do that? Like, why would I do something that I was told not to do? It became kind of a question for the rest of my life. But yes, that's my mannequin story. A little odd and off the track there, but it's an interesting phenomenon. And there's not too many places anymore that do have mannequins, the stores that still use them, I can't stop looking in them, in the windows. I just think they are truly, I don't know, it's something very beautiful. We have a store that's been in our town, in the downtown here, for 96 years, going on 96 years. It's been a clothing store in the same location for all that time. And the 86-year-old owner of the store still dresses the windows, and she still puts those clothes on those mannequins. And there's just something about it that kind of touches you deep in your soul. I don't know what it is, but it's a fascination for sure. So you've captured some of the most unique topics in books I think I've ever seen, but truly beautiful. Now, where do people find all of your whole collection? Can they go to your website or Amazon or both?
Amazon is the best place to find my books. And then to learn more about me, they can always visit brandyisadora.com.
Brandy Isadora, and Isadora is spelled Isadora, Brandy with a Y, brandyisadora.com. And Brandy, are you still doing professional photography shoots and such?
Oh, yes. Yeah, that keeps me busy. Sure.
Is that your lifeblood? And I know at one time you were in a heavy metal band, were you not yourself?
Yes, I was in a heavy metal band called Corvus, and we went on tour and did that whole thing. That was quite a learning experience. But yeah, I put away the guitar because I was getting too old to be carrying around the gear, and I switched to the cello and play in orchestra now.
Oh my gosh, I think that's absolutely beautiful. You are just kind of really brimming with beautiful artistry on so many levels. Again, her name is Brandy Isadora, and you can find all of her works at brandyisadora.com and also at Amazon or wherever fine books are sold. Thank you so much for inspiring us today. Art is truly inspirational, and I thank you because this is an interesting dive into how someone, I think all of us at some point in life say, oh, I wish I have a book in me, or I wish I could play music, or I wish I could do this. You've done all of it and answered that call within your own heart and soul. So thank you for being an inspiration.
Thank you.
brandyisadora.com.
You're listening to The Way Home with Laura Smith. Once again, here's Laura.
Well, with qualified commercial truck drivers in such high demand nationwide, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration is highlighting how veterans and transitioning service members can turn their military experience into rewarding civilian careers. I just heard about this recently, and I thought, wow, what a wonderful idea. Here to tell us all about it is Michael Hampton. He is the FMCSA Assistant Administrator and Senior Policy Advisor. That acronym, again, for the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. Great to have you today, Michael. Thank you.
Laura, it's so good to be here. Thank you for having me.
I heard about this just fairly recently. I guess President Trump and the administration was talking about how this was going to be an idea for filling some of these much needed CDL licenses for veterans that can transfer what their criteria is and their ability to drive military vehicles and such, and put it into use right here in the United States with a CDL license. Is this something that's already started and they can start right away?
That's a great question. So what this initiative is called is Freedom Haulers. And so this Freedom Haulers it's a federal interagency initiative led by the president and the United States Department of Transportation, designed to establish a direct pipeline for military veterans into the American trucking industry. And so the goal is to secure and support the nation's supply chains by placing highly disciplined, highly trained veterans behind the wheels of these big rigs. And so to answer your question, there are military veterans right now with incredible experience. They have driven heavy military vehicles for our country, and we thank them for their service. And when they decide to hang up the uniform and transition into the civilian workforce, we need to honor their service and their experience and help them transition to the civilian workforce. So FMCSA and the Department of Transportation has two programs. One, it's the skills test waiver, and the other is the knowledge test waiver, or the even exchange program. And what that does is, if you have military experience, and you want to get your commercial driver's license to work in the American trucking industry, you are not treated as a brand new, never been behind the wheel of a truck individual. You are treated with the experience in which you have. So the skills test waiver allows you to apply what you already have done in the military and to ensure that you do not have to go through redundant testing. And then the Even Exchange program also waives the knowledge test requirement to further support veterans and to ensure that they're not subject to bureaucratic red tape, but instead we, as the United States, honors their service.
It seems to make so much sense. Clearly, we have a need for this type of driving to be allowed, in the United States right now, especially because I know that they are really cracking down on people who are not legally in the country or who can't speak the language. They're losing their licenses that they got. And so they need to be filled. We have a lot of trucking here in northern Indiana and companies right around the corner from my house, actually, that there are signs all the time that they are hiring. And I've heard that it's actually a really good job. It has great benefits. The pay is really good. And it just makes all the sense in the world to have somebody, one of our veterans, to come back and to be able to kind of get into this role, very quickly and easily like that. Are these types of jobs, are they paying really well these days?
They are. These are great quality American jobs, and they are ready for great quality American veterans to fill those jobs. And I'm glad you brought up the point about the unqualified drivers. What this administration, the president and the secretary have done is incredible, because they have understood that there are unqualified drivers on America's roadways that have caused horrific crashes. And they've taken enforcement action against states and compelled states to revoke illegally issued licenses and to place drivers who cannot read basic road signs out of service and take them off our roads. And so with those drivers exiting the market, it leaves room for veterans to take the spot in the cab. And who better to answer the call to serve this country again, to deliver the essential goods this country needs, than those who have already served.
Yes. And so is it an easy process? Do they just kind of look in their local area for maybe trucking companies that are hiring and just tell them their situation and that they're a veteran, and will there already be people in place ready to help?
Absolutely. So one, there are numerous opportunities and programs in place to support a veteran in their transition from the civilian service, from the military service to civilian service. So, for example, if a veteran does not have heavy truck experience, then they could use the GI Bill to help pay for that trucking school and to be able to be trained for their CDL, as well as we have programs in place to be able to exchange your license. And so you don't have to go through all that bureaucracy, but rather it is a quick, seamless process from transition from your military career into a good, strong civilian career. But I do want to make a plug. If you go to freedomhollers.dot.gov, and again, that is freedomhollers.dot.gov, we have a list of partners. These are partners who want to hire veterans. They have veteran hiring programs. We had the president hosted an event at the White House last week. And at that event, Werner, a great American trucking company, announced that they are going to hire 1,400 veterans in 2027. That is a commitment to honoring the service of those veterans, and we appreciate them for that announcement.
That is very exciting. Was that Hire a Vet Day, or was that a different?
It was all within that same week. So it was just shortly after Hire a Vet Day. But we also had Warner on Fox and Friends that Saturday morning on National Hire a Vet Day. They had an amazing looking Operation Freedom truck in the middle of New York City to promote hiring veterans.
That's so wonderful. What is the easiest website for anybody hearing this that might know a vet, or if they are them themselves, again, give us the exact websites to go to that are easy to remember and where they can get all the help they need to get started.
Absolutely. Anybody who's interested can go to freedomhollers.dot.gov. It's freedomhollers.dot.gov. And I do want to make one additional plug. So the Even Exchange program, the program that allows military veterans to just exchange their license to get a commercial driver's license, currently 27 states are participating in that program. And since launching this initiative, and another 9 states have committed to implementing the Even Exchange program. And we want to thank Indiana for being part of one of those states.
That's very exciting. Thank you so much. Michael Hampton, FMCSA, Assistant Administrator and Senior Policy Advisor. Hire a vet. They are qualified, and indeed, they are going to add so much to the workforce in our great and beautiful country. Thank you for being here today.
Laura, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to The Way Home. Each and every one of you are a part of The Way Home family, and we just wish for nothing but great happiness and safety and good health and prosperity, success, everything that you can possibly have to make your life a good one. And we'll see you next time on The Way Home. I'm Laura Smith.
Podcasts by Federated Media.